This meeting is focused on the Tri-County Regional Vocational Technical School and their building project, or proposed building project, for which we'll be having a special election later in October. The first item on the agenda will be a presentation from representatives of the Tri-County Building Committee. And following their presentation, we'll have open Q&A, first from members of the board and then from the public as well. On the presentation itself, I would ask you to confine those questions to the elements of their presentation and not bog them down with questions about how we are paying for it as a town. When we're done with that Q&A, there'll be a brief presentation about the costs that we see coming to the town of Plainville, and we'll discuss some options we have potentially to pay for it, but we'll open up to Q&A on that specifically after that. So out of respect for their time, I don't want to tie them up with some of those details, but I hope we can tie them up with lots of good questions about the project itself. And one reminder, I'm sorry, I should have said this earlier, as with all meetings here in the select board room, this meeting is being broadcast by North TV and being recorded for further use. So anyway, no further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's great to be back in Plainville. I'm Dan Haynes, School Business Manager at Tri-County Voc. I just want to introduce the team. Dr. McGuire is on her way. She's at a meeting at Tri-County, but she said she will be here. So next to me is Kyle Franceschi. He's from our designer architect team, DRA. Steve Johnson from Consigli Construction. Christina Delangelo from our OPM team. Doran Whittier. Brian Mushnick, School Building Chair. And Stanley Wydek, your representative to the Tri-County School Building. So I'll turn it over to Cal, and we have a short video.
Yeah, we thought we'd start with a short video, which is available on the website. But
I recently read an article that said
introduction.
The majority of people in the trades are 50 years or older and planning to retire in the next 10 years. Without schools like Tri-County replenishing the pipeline, we're in trouble.
Anyone who's tried to get a plumber or a carpenter to their house in the past 3 or 4 years and has to wait 6 months knows the high demand that these fields are in right now.
Tri-County is a regional vocational technical high school. We serve students from Sherburne all the way to Seekonk. We have 16 career vocational programs that we offer students in grades 9 through 12. And we also have a very robust adult education program as well.
Tri-County is a place that prepares you for the real world. You leave here with a set of skills that regular high schools don't give you.
From our point now, we can immediately go out into the field once we graduate. Everybody else, they still need to take 1 or 2 years to actually learn the trade that they're doing. We're doing that now, as well as having the normal high school experience.
It's very important to have a school like this in your community. It just provides more education and more of a hands-on boost in life.
Over the last 20 years, I've seen a tremendous evolution in vocational education and the value it brings to all levels of learners and back to the communities that the kids come from. These kids are leaving Tri-County ahead of their peers because not only are they ready for post-secondary education, but they also have a skill set that's marketable in today's society.
I mean, the school is very old.
It's falling apart.
There's no like walls caving in or anything like that, but it is decaying and it's noticeable.
The current state is really old, and it affects our learning completely. It's digital. Everything's with technology. We don't learn that stuff because we don't have the equipment for it.
Tri-County is a 50-year-old facility that is used from 7:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. The facility is failing.
A lot of the issues with the building are behind the walls. Plumbing, electrical.
When the building was built, they decided to put all the piping under the slab. Great idea, out of the way, maintenance-free, until 50 years later when the pipes start to rupture.
We had a massive flood 2 years ago that wiped out a bunch of our equipment. It took out our gym for a while. Every day there's something else that we have to duct tape back together.
It's hard to teach when you have broken water pipe in the room, or that the electrical circuits are overloaded so much that you can't use the equipment that you need.
There was a preconception that this project would be a renovation addition project because it appears to be a solid, well-built facility that should have a long life to it and perhaps only needed a few adjustments.
We applied at the MSBA for a renovation project to this building. As part of the application, the MSBA requires that you examine renovation addition, or a new building, just to be able to see economically what it looks like. It wasn't until that time that we realized building a new building would cost just as much as a renovation.
We did extensive research. We contacted other schools that had done repair renovations. We found out, how does this affect the students? And they told us a number of things. One, it affects your students for 4 years. It's brutally disruptive. They all told us, we wish we had a new building.
In the proposed new school, it's a fairly compact site. There's a 3-story building, which is actually more efficient both from an energy and a circulation flow. The academic classrooms, for the most part, are located literally across the corridor from the career tech shops, even the noisy kind of industrial ones. And we've been able to do this in some other schools safely and effectively to separate the sound and acoustics so that those students and those teachers can collaborate.
And it's very impressive. I think it's innovative. It has a new sort of concept to it where we have different departments and different shops, academic, vocational, all together. It's a different philosophy. And I think that's a really exciting prospect for our school community.
I think it'll benefit our students and the community because to come to a vocational school is an option that builds a lot of perspective for the students and helps them decide what they really want to do with the rest of their lives. It's a huge advantage.
I think the one takeaway for me would be the option of rebuilding at Tri-County is really not an option. We need to do something. We can't let the facility just continue to deteriorate and then expect that we're going to turn out high quality people to fill the needs of the industry in this area. It's absolutely at a point where it needs to be addressed.
Thank you for your time there. I'll just run through a few slides again just to present a little bit more detailed information about the project, and really we just want to make ourselves available to answer your questions. For those who aren't familiar, obviously Tri-County's in Franklin. It serves a number of communities that stretch pretty far geographically. Plainville sends a lot of students there among the other communities as well. Oops. I see it's not advancing. How about this? There we go. For those who aren't familiar, just very briefly, the project is part of the Massachusetts School Building Authority's program. They do reimburse a fair percentage of the cost. They also have a fairly prescribed process that we have to go through in evaluating this. As you might have heard in that video, the superintendent and a lot of us had this preconception that this was going to be a renovation addition. But the first phase of this project, the feasibility phase, we actually did study. We looked at all those deficiencies, both the physical deficiencies and sort of educational ones. And once we put together kind of a program of what it would take to address all of those and bring the building up to code, it did come remarkably close to the cost and certainly not the value of a new school. You heard about disruption too, things like that. So there were some things that kind of swayed the balance in favor of new construction. So right now we're in we completed the schematic design phase, that yellow band right there, and as you heard, there is a vote coming up later in this month to approve the project. And if that's successful, we have another several months of documentation in order to put the construction documents together for a contractor to build it. It will take a few years to build it, as you can see. So really the completion date is out there in 2027. Oops, that's backwards. So there we are. So as I mentioned, and as you saw in the video, we don't need to go into too much detail, but there are, the building has been well maintained, but there are certain systems that are just beyond their lifespan. including not just like electrical systems or the plumbing systems that were mentioned under slab, even the exterior wall and windows needed attention. And when we looked at it, you know, to seriously extend the longevity of the building, we'd end up rebuilding the exterior wall as well in this. And so basically just saving the structure of the building in addition to the other kind of facilities and infrastructure needs. So we did look at several options. These were the final sort of three that were looked at: 2 addition renovation options and 1 new construction option. But those were sort of winnowed down from about, I think we had 7 or 8 options that were considered. And as you can see in the end there, the total project cost came out to around $280 million for each of the options. And so then cost is obviously important, but we also looked at other criteria, like disruption, like how well does the ultimate solution fit the education program that the school has in mind. And the new construction was clearly superior to the other options in that regard. Least disruptive, shorter construction period, better fit to the education plan, and so forth. So those are some of the numbers, and I know those are very important to you, and you'll be talking about how to finance it later, but the total project cost, which is an all-in number, not just the hard construction cost, but also furniture and equipment, fees, contingency, all of that is the last column there on the right. So just again, quickly, for those who aren't familiar with the site, here's an aerial view of the property that they currently own. You can see the building there, white and red roof, sits in the center. It's kind of a sprawling 1- and 2-story building in ways. And the new school is being sited, let me see if my cursor works, there's the mouse. Right behind the building where these solar panels, these are ground-mounted solar panels, where they sit, became the optimal location for new construction, and it allows the existing school to stay in operation. They'll obviously lose a few parking spaces, they'll lose the solar panels, but for the most part the school can operate day to day during the construction period, safely segregated, you know, from the ongoing construction. The entrance drive will remain. It has 2 ways in and out of the site. The site itself is fairly, kind of an awkward configuration with a lot of topography. These are terraces that are about 10 feet apart for those who have been there as it slopes up the hill. And so that's why this area here became the preferred location for the new school. And here's what it would look like in sort of a rendering with the existing building removed. So again, at the bottom here is that existing driveway. This alignment here is about the current driveway, which brings you to the current front door. But behind the school would sit the new school. It would be a 3-story building. It is a more compact footprint. It's organized in kind of a courtyard configuration with parking lots in the front, service area in the back. For those who are familiar with vocational schools, they have lots of shops that need overhead doors and truck access, and so there's a service drive all around the building that also serves to sort of separate the car and bus traffic on the site. And then once the new building is completed and occupied, the existing building can be removed, the parking finished, and new athletic fields rebuilt. These are basically where the existing fields are now, but they would be renovated and reconfigured. This student parking lot would be expanded. This new parking lot is basically where the existing building is. And then just to share with you quickly the conceptual floor plans, these are pretty basic, but they do explain the organization of the building. There's a main entrance here right by the administration area for good welcoming as well as security. Brings you in kind of we might say this is sort of the public side of the building where there's an auditorium. The gymnasium is on the 2nd floor, stacked above the locker rooms here at this end of the building. The cafeteria is what's called the student commons in the center of the building here. And then the academic areas wrap around the other 3 sides of the courtyard. And you may know that the students at the school do serve the public in a few of these shops, like the culinary arts program that runs a restaurant, the cosmetology program that runs a salon, and so there's a dedicated customer entrance here with some dedicated parking that brings the public safely into the school, but this doesn't show it in detail, but there's an inner line of doors that would be locked, and so the public coming in here doesn't have access to the rest of the school, just to those two programs there. And as was mentioned in the video, one of the goals of the education program was, one, to organize the shops in these clusters so that like-minded shops are kind of next to each other, but also to locate them in close proximity to academic classrooms. So directly across the hall, this could be a math classroom, an English classroom, and there's some collaborative areas, and there's teacher workrooms in close proximity to make the school more unified and collaborative, as opposed to the way it's organized today. All the shops are kind of on the ground floor and all the academics are on the second floor. There's kind of a disconnect there. So the upper floors also wrap around that courtyard, and again you can see the academic classrooms and then some other shops. These are what we might call low bay shops. They don't need to be on the ground floor, so they stack above the shops below. And again, on the left-hand end of the plan is the library, the auditorium, the gymnasium, kind of the larger public spaces with the student commons in the center there. And there is a third floor as well that's basically just the balance of the classrooms here, which may also be kind of the freshman academy when ninth graders come to the school for the first semester or so. They have kind of a different schedule than the rest of the school, and it's a way to accommodate them. And then just to give you the process here that is really important at this point in time. Obviously, we are in October. It's kind of a unique election you may not be familiar with necessarily. It's a regional election. So all, 11 communities in the region all vote at the same time on the same day, and all the votes are counted collectively. It's not town by town, and it's the majority carries the day in that kind of election. It's prescribed by the state law, and it's voted on by the district school committee. They have agreed to a 30-year bond for the project to spread out the payments over 30 years, and the assessment will start, each year based on each town's percentage of enrollment. I think there's a formula. It's not just 1 year. Is it a 3-year average? It is. It's just 1 year average. So if your town has 10% of the students, you'd pay 10% of the assessment, basically. And there is a minimum for, if you don't even have any school, students in the school, you still pay a minimum for, as if you had 5 pupils in there. So that's the basic process for the project. It's the way regional vocational schools are funded and financed in the state. And that's sort of where we are. I think that's what we wanted to share with you today. You can see the numbers. I think you may have gotten a handout in advance here to see where Plainville is. There's, based on recent, let's see, this is last year, 91 students. This year, 113 students. It will fluctuate year to year, and so your assessment may change. It may go from whatever 10% to 11% or down to 9%, again, depending on the percentage of students you have. So that's the kind of numbers and how things are calculated here. So I'm more than happy to take some questions, and we have a lot of folks here in finance, construction, project management, who can answer a variety of questions related to the project.
Okay. Thank you. Before I start with questions, I didn't know if Mr. Mushnick or Mr. Wydak wanted to add anything to the presentation, or we were ready to jump in.
I'm here to answer questions.
Okay. And welcome to Plainville, all of you actually, who haven't been here before. I have questions about primarily about project cash flow. I didn't get these questions answered in the spring, and I didn't expect them answered in the spring because it was, the project was still being prepared. We didn't know, you didn't know for sure how big it was going to be. We didn't know timing, a lot of things. the election's in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Do we have any idea yet what our assessments we should expect for fiscal 25, 26, 27 in terms of supporting bond authorization notes or bond anticipation notes or other design costs, or do we expect that to?
You want to take that in?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Brian, put the lights on there probably. I look better on TV in the dark, I know, but. Thank you.
So the debt borrowing, which would approximate $200 million, it's quite substantial.
Yeah.
And we all know what's happened with the short-term rates recently. They're very unpredictable and they're very high. So borrowing short-term, if this was 4 or 5 years ago, we may have funded this whole project with short-term
Right.
debt at
That's
0.4% interest. So I think in talking with our financial advisor and working with our OPM and looking at cash flow, we would probably borrow about $25 million in a short-term note per year, probably in January, this next January, and that would be due in January of '25. So that would affect the debt assessment for fiscal '25. We would work that into our budget that we will be working on at about the same time.
That'd be an interest, would that be
It'd be
interest only?
yeah.
Okay.
Financial advisor has indicated from that point, you know, when that matures in '25, we will look at what the market is, what the bond market looks like. And at that time, maybe borrow $140 million. You know, that would depend on when construction will start, if they're ahead of the game, behind, you know. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's a real fluid situation with the interest rates. So those are the things that we're working on right now. But unfortunately, that short-term borrowing to finance the project will not be available to us, it doesn't look like at this point.
Right. So in terms of borrowing the first large chunk, which of the 200 million, 140 or something like that, when will that hit our assessments?
That would probably hit in 2026, principal and interest.
Fiscal 26?
Yeah.
Okay.
There'll be a holdback of, and we're not going to borrow the entire 200 million. This project won't get closed out by the MSBA and audited until
Right.
2028, 29. So it could be 2030,
Right.
when we know the final cost of the project.
Okay. But we would, well,
You should know that cost
I-
before
I-
that, I would think.
But we won't know what our reimbursement will be
Excuse
until
me.
they audit the project.
excuse me, we'll take questions
Oh, excuse me.
Sorry.
in a bit. We were told in an earlier presentation, though, that the 286 million, which I think was the total price tag,
Yep.
was going to be, that was going to be the number.
286 is the number.
That's the limit.
That is-
That's the limit on the
Maybe
number, I should
less
say.
than that.
Right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said the number. That's the limit on the number.
Yes, that has been approved by the MSBA. That is our scope and budget.
Okay, so how soon can we expect more cash flow information on the project?
I would say around December, January, when we, you know, obviously we need to get past this vote. And from that point forward, we will be working with the OPM and our financial advisor to come up with a real solid cash flow.
I appreciate it's a difficult thing to do. I ask because part of the consideration in voting is going to be how soon we have to start paying how much money. Because for a town like Plainville, we're, as it stands today, we're on the hook for 12% of the cost. And we are a small town. So that's a concern. And if we're going to be hit with $1.5 million assessment in fiscal 26 or 25 or 27 or 28, how we prepare for that will determine
I
our
mean, if we
ability to
move
do
forward
it.
with that bond, I mean, I would think the 25 assessment would be in the $120,000 range.
We're starting to do our budget now.
Mhm.
You're gonna
As-
tell
as
me
am I.
precisely? At some
I
point?
will in December.
Okay, I can accept that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, December for the interest only January 24th short-term borrowing is fine for our budget planning. We can't go later than that, but the hard part is in voting and asking people whether to vote yes or no, knowing when we're going to start getting hit with $1.5 million bill.
$1.5 million will be 27 and after, and it will be consistent
Right.
at that point.
Right. But, you know, if
Sorry, we're doing FY '27 or fiscal or calendar '27? Thank you.
fiscal, that just helps us determine how much time we have though to save up or build that into our budgets or whatever we're going to do. So I think you've implied there are going to be at least 2 bond issuances, I think. 'cause you're
In talking with our financial advisor.
Yeah, okay.
But again, that will be based on what the market looks like.
Simple question, when can we expect to get the October 1st, 2023 enrollment numbers?
I can give you a preliminary number right now, 104. That's not certified, we're still working through that
Okay.
process.
That helps my spreadsheet. In the presentation that you made last night for the Norfolk Select Board, there was big discussion about how a large part of the use of the building is in the evening, and late afternoons and evenings. And that's one of the things that's hard for a building like a vocational technical school. It's open 16 hours a day, functioning. The question I had after I saw that presentation was, are the adult ed and evening programs contributing, that use 50% of the building up, are they contributing to this project at all?
We will be looking at how we could, there's usually tuition agreements for our nursing post-secondary program, cosmetology, continuing education programs where we have the one night cookie making. No, they would not be contributing. But our core post-secondary programs, we were looking at building that into their tuition agreement in some form.
I hadn't thought about it until I saw last night's presentation, with the thought that if they're legitimately consuming that much of the resource, that much of the building, it would seem they should be up, helping ante up as well. I get that one, I get that one, I get that one. That's it for my questions for the moment. Okay, Ms. Clark?
So, was there any thought to making this bigger to accommodate more students?
The MSBA prescribes, there's a process.
Yeah.
The design enrollment is an amount that we have to agree upon. And 1,000 students was determined to be the right amount for Tri-County. And that mirrors our enrollment over the past 10 years. It's been a low of 895, a high of 981.
Okay. So what happens if this is voted down?
Ryan, you want to take that one?
I'm the doom and gloom guy.
I want to
Oh, no,
understand.
So, if the election does not go in our favor, we will be given a certain period of time by the MSBA to re-educate, to try again. It's probably most likely 120 days, same amount of time we got from the approval of the project to the vote. If it did fail again for the second time, that will engage the mechanism of repair the building, which back in 2019, 2018 was $165 million to keep it the way it is. As you know, that anytime you start a project, you then have to bring the project up to code. We don't have fire suppression, we don't have security doors, we don't have a lot of stuff. That will not be reimbursable at all, any way, shape, or form, and that will become an assessment every year. We can't tell you how much each year, it'll be bonded out, and it will be much worse than getting an assessment from us through a new building. It is not the way we want to go. And it will be the same building we have.
Right.
It will be,
So there's not a plan in place for that?
of course there's a plan in place for that. Would be the plan, repair the building, because it is falling apart.
Okay.
And it will be, is there a stepped and tiered program put in place at this point? No, because we're hoping we don't ever have to go there. But it'll be bad. It'll put your children in danger. There will be major construction going on all the time for who knows how long, till these projects get solved. It's not good. It won't be good. But something has to be done now, which is why we're at this point.
Excuse me for interrupting. Members of the audience, if you have questions or conversations you want to have, please take them outside while we're in discussion here, or wait your turn. Thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that was all I had. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, the driver on that for repairs is going to be, you fix what needs to be fixed. At the same time, you have to bring it up to code.
Correct. Every
which
time you break a wall
expands
open.
the cost.
Correct.
And it'll become short-term assessments that we get over and over and over.
As you saw in the video, you know, the pipes are all in the slab. So what happens every time a pipe breaks, and it happens every year or so, is we start playing, where's the water coming from? It's not where it came out. It's coming from somewhere else, and we just start excavating the building until we find it. You know, 2 years ago, we had the server room, the water path of least resistance was the server room, and wiped out our server room, and kind of lost electronics for a few days while we got new stuff. It just, that's what kind of stuff happens. You can't repair that stuff. I was informed that the type of pipe they used back then in 1974 was fantastic, but there was no long-term study on it. And now what happens is it's a welded seam pipe. They burst because of the moisture that's constantly around them. So like, you know, expect it to keep coming. Hopefully it's always clean water, but it's not always clean water, so.
You were all set?
I'm all set.
Yeah, just tacking on to one of her questions that I meant, reminded me of something I meant to ask. You have currently 933 students or so this year. You have a waiting list, as I understand, for some programs. Is that correct, or is?
So, yeah, well, we try to enroll a little bit more, because there's always some students who, over the summer, decide, I don't want to go, I can't leave my friends. Some who show up and go, this just isn't for me, they know right away. Some, throughout the course of the year, decide to withdraw. Some start their program in January and by June have decided that's not what they want. So there are always some children who don't, or students who don't get their first choice, they're put on a waiting list. We always have some students who want to come in that just didn't get in, because the numbers don't dictate, don't predicate us being able to get them in. So there's always some sort of a waiting list, yes.
But a fairly high percentage, you would say, of Plainville students who are coming out of 8th grade that want to go to Tri-County can go to Tri-County.
Yes.
So we're not slotted at 100,
Well, you
110.
had a few less, would you
Right.
have 8 less this year?
Right.
You know, the ebb and flow of, some towns move up, some towns move back, Sherburne stays at 3.
Or less.
Well, they send a lot of kids to the Aggie.
Mr. Noble, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
With that, I will open up to the floor if you have questions. Because this is being broadcast, I would ask you to come forward to the microphone that's at this desk. Remember to identify yourself by name, and then you may ask a question. So come on up, Ms. Parker.
Hi.
Kathleen Parker, Pleasant Street. I guess I need new glasses. I couldn't read your spreadsheet with all of your numbers. I could see, however, that the end result, 280 million that we're talking about. I'm
286 million.
286, thank you. After I caught my breath, because I heard someone say that and I caught my breath. I'm presuming, tell me if I'm right or wrong, please, that that includes the debt service that we're talking about, the interest costs that we're talking about.
No, that's construction cost.
Okay, so now we're talking about...
Project cost. Complete
cost.
project cost.
Just the project. So now we're talking about another, someone help me if your financial advisor is here, another 100 million? To borrow 300 for 30 years? Over 100 million.
It's 205 million you're borrowing.
So, okay, so
the
that was
state
my
is
second question.
correct.
They're going to give us 81. We don't know for sure because we don't.
We
We do know.
Yes, we do.
Do know. So that's your reimbursement rate?
Correct.
Okay, I thought I heard.
Of eligible costs.
Of eligible costs. Some of them will be deemed
So,
ineligible.
right, so I'll explain a little bit about eligible costs. So, the library, they informed us that vocational schools don't need a library, or as much library.
Okay.
The MSBA is not staffed with vocational people. We asked them to review it, and they came back and said no. And we asked them to review it again, and they still said no. And we're still building a library, because library is a very important part of our building,
Right.
or media center. Things like, we put boilers in 10 years ago. Their life expectancy by the time the new building is built will be almost done. But because we already put them in, they won't give us full value for new boilers. So we're on the hook for partial boilers. Even though when you build a building, those boilers are still decent. Sorry, we're not, there's so many of those. The sheet is, I don't know, how many pages
The
of,
biggest one is the eligible cost per square foot is just so out of date, has not kept up with inflation.
Okay.
And the difference, unfortunately, is ineligible for reimbursement.
Right, and we know any of us who have tried to do anything in our own homes know what happened during COVID with construction costs.
and keep in mind, this building is enormous, because it's two buildings.
Right.
It's an academic building, it's a vocational building. So it's basically twice the size of anything you normally would build, so it's...
So getting back to my point then, we think it's going to be 286 plus 105.
Interest?
Interest.
Interest will be close to 150.
150.
Depending on the
so
interest
now
rate, yeah.
We're talking about getting close to, 400 if not more, right? For getting $450 million for 1,000 students. Okay.
Over the course of the last 50 years, there's been 10,000 students who graduated from there.
And all with, any of the ones I know, all of them have very nice lives that they've made from that.
In the first 50 years, it was free. That building was free. The
Because it was-
state and the federal government built that building. So
I remember that, and I don't remember being.
we are also asking actively for more money. We are working very hard with the legislature to find some more money, because the system is outdated, and I won't say it's a penalty, but it's kind of a penalty for vocational. All the vocational buildings that were built were almost all built at the same time. They are literally all timing out at the same time. So Dr. McGuire has been very active in Washington and here, trying to get a piece of that money they keep telling us there's out there. At this point, we've gone a number of rounds. It doesn't mean we're getting anything, but it doesn't mean we're not either. But we're not going to promise it to you. We're hoping to surprise you with it.
We love happy surprises.
Well, you know how state funding happens. It's a surprise. You get a phone call on a Friday.
Right, that's true. Is there any discussion in the reimbursement rates about picking up some of that interest cost? Is that ever going to be eligible? No. So what is our contingency on the 286 million?
Okay.
For new construction, generally like 5% of the.
And is that in your experience adequate, or are we going to be coming back in 3 years?
My experience is, as a school committee rep who owns a garage, I've never built a school in my life. That's what the professionals are for.
That's right.
Typically, the range is like 3 to 5% for new construction. And a lot of our projects, again, they all vary depending on, what's underground, or when you're tearing the building down, what you might find, things that, that's what contingencies are for. But many of our projects have been less than 3%.
So is this 286 million inclusive of any of the knockdown costs as well?
Yes.
That's all part of it. And I saw pictures of the fields and the parking lots and all of that. They're all everything. This is going to be
It's like a turnkey cost.
There's been a lot of talk about the fields as well. we're not building fields for the sake of building fields. Because this project is happening while there's an active school going on, in order to store hundreds of thousands of yards of material, park cars for 200 laborers, tradesmen who will be working there, it's got to go in the fields. So for 3 years, we won't have fields at the
Will
right? Away games.
All away games?
All away.
But you won't give up any of the athletics?
No, you just, many schools have been through this.
Right.
So you just become a traveling, some of the away games, we're the home team.
Okay. You just sort of
The gym will
sharing.
still be good, though.
Yeah, okay. So,
Is it a person?
so I take your experience dictates this type of number. You don't just make it up to make things balance.
Right.
Right, so I'm going to trust that when you tell me that we
We're
have
trying to be
a,
prudent and have enough there for these unforeseens, but at the same time, be considerate of trying to keep it as low as reasonable.
okay,
So the reason we have Doran Whittier as our OPM and DRA as our designers, there's a distinct state system that we follow to pick these people. We interviewed a number of companies, they give us a perspective, we have used a scoring sheet the state supplies, and then it comes down to, how you feel about who you can work with and what experience they have. Both of these companies, as well as Consigli, all have vocational school experience. It's
Okay.
not like building a traditional school. That was part of the reason we went with them, because we need to know that they know, because, again, I'm a volunteer, and I
Thank
work
you.
with academics, and, none of us, sure, we have somebody who runs the carpentry department, but he's never built a school either. So I was looking at the timeline, and I said, do I really have 2 years in on this already? Well, plus 2 years, because we've been petitioning the state for a number of years, and I'm just like, wow, boy, how time flies while you're
having fun.
getting old while you're getting this done.
By the way, to answer your question, it looks like the contingency that is being carried is 4%.
4%.
Construction costs.
4% of
We're in
construction.
the middle of that 3 to 5
Okay,
window.
okay. You've said you were committed, you have a commitment from the state for 81 million, and yet you said I thought, I must have misunderstood something, because I thought there was a question about what is the reimbursement rate, and I thought I
So-
heard it said that there wasn't known yet.
50.2% was the
56.56.
of eligible, which works its way
Okay.
out to 29.2%.
It's-
Wow.
The 81 million, though, is what they call the maximum grant.
And it may not be
It could be a
81.
little less if during the audit, at the end of the project, they discover some expenses that fall into the ineligible.
It could also be $2 million more. They carry
They
they carry a little bit of contingency as well.
As well, okay. So 56.5, you said, was out?
56.56.
56 eligible costs. And estimated to be 81, give or take 2 more million. Okay. Okay. I
When you
think
work that
those-
backwards, Kathy, you'll find out that 156 million or so is the reimbursable cost, and 126 million is the amount.
That's what I want to work on.
That's a
At
terrible.
the state level, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it, thank you.
There are a number of bills up on the hill, and call your state senator, call your state rep. Around here, they're all involved in it. So they're all aware of it, but keep putting the bug in their ear. Dr. McGuire is here.
Thank you, Kathy.
It's okay.
We do 3 of these.
Thank you, Mrs. Parker. Bruce, in 1 second, I just want to introduce Dr. Karen McGuire, who's the superintendent, and see if she has anything she wants to add either on the legislative parts, because we didn't really talk about what's happening legislatively, but I don't know if you want to mention that or anything else you want to add.
We were having a similar event at Tri-County. We had the parents and the employers and some student groups there. So we were lucky to get a culinary grant last year for $500,000 for new equipment. But the problem is, as it showed up, it didn't fit, had to be sent back and so forth. So the culinary kids cooked the dinner tonight for the 300 people that are there in the bakery oven. So it took a little longer for it to come out than we anticipated. And we were hoping to start it at about 5:30, but we didn't start until a little bit after 6, so I apologize for my delay in arriving here. But as far as the legislation, yes, I'm glad I came in at that part. We do have a number of bills that are...
'Cause you're on North TV now, so.
Yeah, North TV.
Welcome.
So hello, Peter Gay. I'm on North TV. Thank you. So we do have a number of bills. In fact, we just had a breakfast on Friday at Tri-County where the legislators in this area came to talk a little bit more about that. So one of the things that we struggle with being a vocational school is it costs much more to build a vocational school than it does a comprehensive school. In that, and I'll just give the example, that for an English classroom, it costs so much to build an English classroom, but to build a dental lab, we have to line the walls with lead. So that costs a lot more than it does a comprehensive school. The MSBA does not have a funding mechanism to reimburse, and this is, I think, kind of to your question, that the MSBA does not have a funding mechanism to reimburse vocational schools as such. It is the same template that is used for comprehensive schools. We ask that they consider that it costs more, but in some ways they'll cut funding for us. For the library, for instance, I'll use that. They reimbursed us for the eligible cost of the library for half of our student population, because their philosophy was that the kids that are in the VOTEC programs don't need the library. Which is not the way that our VOTEC schools work. But on the other hand, when I talked about the lead, they didn't give additional money for the lead that we need for the vocational programs. So part of the bills that are making their way around now, sponsored by Representative Scanlon and North Attleboro, Senator Feeney, Hewitt, a number of our legislators from this area, talk about the reimbursement for vocational school projects, and to not cap them at the lower reimbursement rate, that they actually cap them at a higher rate to compensate for some of those things like the lead in the walls or the steel that we need for our higher bay shops and so forth. We're asking that the projects in VOTEC schools be reimbursed at a rate more like 75 to 90% of eligible costs, as opposed to the 56 or 52.6%. Really, the situation is Tri-County is not the only vocational school in the Commonwealth that's in a situation now to be rebuilt. They were all built at about the same time, 50 years ago, so they're all aging out at the same time. And there are 9 vocational schools in the MSBA pipeline right now that impact over 110 or so communities, with additional schools coming on each year. Like, for instance, Keefe Tech in Framingham will be coming into the MSBA pipeline, as will Shawsheen in Billerica, adding another 20 or so towns that would be impacted by these vocational school buildings. So the legislation talks about reimbursement, but it also talks about adding seats to the MSBA Board of Directors. Right now, the MSBA Board of Directors has 17 members. We're asking to increase that to 19 members and have 2 additional seats that represent VOTEC schools. So when they're talking about reimbursements and when they're talking about funding, there are people in the room that know what they're talking about. So that we don't have this situation where people are making a decision to cut the library reimbursement in half because the VOTEC kids don't need books, right? Because it's just not the way it is now. Most of our, if not all, of our programs are in situations where they have to have a beyond grade 12 reading level to be able to understand the manuals and such. It is not the VOTEC school of 1964, so it's a lot different. The other piece that the legislation is asking for is for there to be trust fund, if you will, of $3 billion from the millionaire's tax that is funneled into a building project pool to help pay for these buildings so that they're not on the back of the taxpayers and the local communities. Now, is $3 billion a pipe dream or a lot of money? Well, when you consider that one school costs, $285 million, and Whittier up in Haverhill is coming in at $425 million, and you have 9 or 10 of them in the pipeline. I don't think that $3 billion is a wild amount to ask to start with. So we'll see where it goes. It's made it through both the House and Senate. Both of these bills have, and it has been sent to the Education Committee, where we testified a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Borg from North Attleboro, the town manager, I know Brian was willing to go as well to testify to the legislature on the importance of these bills, and we're hoping to get a favorable readout from them. And at that point, they'll go back to the House and go back to the Senate and then to Ways and Means. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll keep trying. We will. I often say I come from, the town of Carver, and my town is also in a situation where we're trying to rebuild the VOTEC school that our kids go to. They go to Old Colony VOTEC, and it's in the same situation. So from a taxpayer standpoint, I get it. I do. And I don't have kids in the school anymore. My kids are all off and gone and moved to Seattle. I don't know. They did. So, it's, I do understand it. So I didn't mean to come in and take over. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you. I think for those of you inclined to reach out to our local legislators, let them know you support these bills, and especially to make sure they are handled retroactively, so that if we move ahead and the bill takes a year or two to get through the legislature, we still will, we and other schools being built now will benefit from it.
Right, yeah, so it was written by our delegation for that, I don't want to say for Tri-County, but it was just the kind of the philosophy of what we needed was what spurred it, so.
Good. Okay, thank you. Mr. Gates.
Sorry. Hello, again.
So I came up here with a focused thought, but it occurs to me that we really need to rally around the communities, not just Plainville, but not just the 11 communities of Tri-County, but the entire state of vocational schools that are trying to get, additions, renovations, rebuilding of the vocational schools, that we need to redirect the monies from climate change to tangible education. So that's one thing. So that's not really why I came up here to this table, but that is one thing that I think we really need to do, is reach out to our representatives, our senators, and say, where do we want to spend our money? Climate change or on tangible education? So anyway, that's not what I came up here for. I was going to come up here because Mr. Mushnick was there and I was going to grill him.
Oh, you can still grill him.
But he was, but my son and his friend was in there many times. However, so one of the questions that I have in general, doesn't matter who's at the podium, is if the towns reject the rebuilding of, or the building of a new, shiny new building, and say, let's renovate instead, because that makes the most sense to us. What is the cost of that versus a new building, which has warranty and everything else, more efficiency, everything about a new building is better versus what we have now?
Yeah, so we did, I'm going to be honest, when I was hired, just started my third year at Tri-County. And when I was hired, Mr. Mushnick actually hired me, right? And his position at the time was this was a remodel. We were remodeling the Tri-County school building. And my experience, I came from Southeastern VOTEC right up Route 495, and we had done an extensive remodel at Southeastern. That was my background. So the idea of a new building was not something we were even entertaining. But as we went through the MSBA feasibility study, they require that we look at that as part of it. And it wasn't until that time that it became apparent to us that a remodel was coming in at about the same as a renovation. The difference is that, a renovation remodel was coming in at the same as a new building. The difference is, with a new building, you have a 50-year lifespan of a new building. With a remodel, you still have the bones of a 50-year-old building with shiny new things inside of it, which was, again, where I came from. That's the situation that that school building is in. And there are significant challenges to remodeling a building and then living in it for the next however many years. You know, when I left, we were 10 years into that project, and now that school is considering having to now go back into the MSBA pipeline for additional work because the remodel just doesn't do what you need it to do. The other issue, and you can see what the prices came in on this slide that's there, but the other issue that you run into are what are called change orders, that you think you know what you're getting into with a remodel, that you open something up and it's not at all what you expected it to be. And I'll be honest that, like my old district, this district too, what we think we have for plans are not really, and they can talk about that a little bit more intelligently than I can, but there are a lot of things that just don't line up with where we think they should be. So I would almost guarantee that would be at a significant change order situation with where we are right now.
So I would like to point out the very top line, base building repair option, $285,000 per square foot, versus new construction at the same.
It's the same square foot. Yeah.
Same square foot. So what is the difference between those two?
So the new building will be a more compact building. The building that we have right now, if you've been to Tri-County, you go into the vocational programs and see how sprawling they are. Yeah. We have a lot of storage. There's a lot of space within the Tri-County building that this new building wouldn't be reimbursed if we were to keep those programs the same size, because they wouldn't reimburse for the space. So although this building is the same square footage, the structure itself is more condensed up and down, and it's more actual education space as opposed to the storage that's in there. So it's deceiving that it says that it's the same. It is the same square footage, but the functionality of the building is different. Yeah.
So if we did nothing, if we reject the new building and we had to start repairing the new building.
The old building, yeah.
The old building,
yes.
Sorry. The very first thing we would need to do is bring it up to fire code and bring it up to the building code, which has some other issues. Does that gain us anything functionally for education? Or are we throwing money at good money after bad money?
So unfortunately, the code will bring us to code, but it doesn't do anything to the education of the students. The ADA code is out of compliance, the size of the doors, all of that. There is no fire suppression system in the building, so all of that would have to be brought to code, the plumbing code, electrical, and that's what that $165 million is on the far right, is the 2019 price for bringing the building to code. But that does nothing to the educational pieces of the building.
Right, so if we vote this down, at the very minimum, $165,000 $165 million will be assessed to the towns versus $285 million for a new building.
With the grant of $82 million off of it.
Right, thank you. That's
that $165 million, just to be clear, wouldn't be an assessment this year. This would be what we'd expect to get assessed over time as those repairs are done.
No, but
over the next 10 years.
However, we still have the 50-year-old building. We're going to put $165 million into it and still have a much older building. That's my point.
So unfortunately, yeah, that's I think what all of our VOTECs are struggling with right now because of when they were built and then grandfathered into the code. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So the point I'm trying to make is that a shiny new building is going to be in our best interest rather than trying to renovate or add on to our existing building.
So I think that that was the determination that the building committee had come out with. Again, we thought that we were looking at a renovation.
Right.
But then when we crunched all of this, it just wasn't gonna work, right?
Right.
For what we thought it was, what it would save us.
Right, and what I'm hearing from my constituents is that we can afford a new building, but I'm not sure we can afford an old building. So
That's a good point.
I defer.
Can I ask a question, kind of piggybacking on you? Has there been any analysis done on savings that might be seen through like the efficiency of a new building in terms of heating, lighting, that type of thing?
Yeah, Kyle can talk to the
When
extensively
we
to
were
that.
analyzing
Yeah.
these
Thank you.
options, we developed a list of criteria, not just cost, but operating costs, disruption,
Yeah.
how it fit the education plan. There were a number of criteria. So we did consider the efficiency upgrades
Yeah.
of both new construction building, what it would cost to operate that, and an addition renovation, what it would cost to operate that too. So those were considerations.
So
And
maybe we'll
even
see
though
that.
it would be more energy efficient with the repairs, the new construction, because it's all new,
Right.
is gonna be slightly better from an energy efficiency point
Yeah.
of view,
Yeah.
and longer lasting
Right.
than an addition
Right, so
renovation.
maybe we'll see that off
So
our
there is some
assessment.
savings.
Yeah.
I don't know, the annual operating cost, you know, unfortunately, it's not in the millions, but
Right.
it's in, you know, it probably
Something.
approaches tens of thousands of
That's what,
dollars
yeah, I
of
would think,
savings.
it's a big building.
Yes.
I believe there's still, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's still a pretty detailed presentation on the different building options up on your website.
On the
Yeah,
website,
on the
yes.
website,
You
yeah.
can see all the criteria that were used to determine.
Yeah, the video we saw earlier, presentations they did for some of the other towns, the analysis of the different building projects are all on a page that they've set up, linked off the Tri-County school page for the Tri-County building project that has a lot more information if you are so inclined. Come on up.
Hi, Kelly Connerton. Could I just ask a clarifying question? The $165 million is a 2019 number? I don't know about anybody.
That was, right, so the very first thing we had to do when we started the project was figure out what it would cost to repair the building. So that is an older number.
Okay, I don't know about anybody else, but in 2019, I was paying half as much as I am for groceries right now. So do you have a more up-to-date number for that? That might give us a little
I
bit.
won't scare you.
Yeah, please do. I think it's double.
Well, so, I mean, if you look at projects that have happened lately, escalation is massive.
I think it's double.
I don't know that it'll be double, because again, but it will be more. I mean, we're hoping just, I mean, I gave you the doom and gloom.
Absolutely.
We don't want to go that way.
I'm here as a parent of a Tri-County student, so I'm here to support and
Yeah.
happily give my testimonial, but looking at that low number is great, except it's not realistic.
Well, again, that number is not reimbursable. It's bondable if we went to another vote, which if you vote it down one time, you'll probably vote it down again.
Well, we've already done that in
And then-
Plainville once.
And then again, the school will probably seek alternative ways to finance it, and there will be an assessment. And our charter doesn't say we have to ask permission to fix our building. We'll fix our building, because, you know, the joke is always, if you dead one student, it's really bad.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah, don't
So-
mess with my kids.
To your point though, we didn't go back in and, you know, I'm quite certain that if we went out today and rebid all of this, the numbers would look different then, you know, but particularly that one, that was the number that the school started with
Right, 'cause that's the
years ago.
oldest of the numbers
It is
up
the
there.
oldest of the numbers that are up there. Yeah, and you're right. And that's why I
Well,
point
my
out that it's 2019.
Bill
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
half as much then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Brenda Watkinson, 45 Washington Street. I have a lot of questions, but they can't be answered tonight because they all have to do with our taxes. But I do have a couple of questions. In one of the very first pictures you showed, there was a solar field. Is that the school's energy source?
The school owns, well, the school is in a contract with the solar field.
Okay, but that's not your solar field that you use to power your school?
Well, we buy energy. We are in a contract with them that we buy energy from them, and then the rest of the energy they turn and sell. So you asking if we're going to keep it? Is
Well,
that-
I'm wondering if this is a green school.
Yeah, so we would be what's called LEED Silver. So we're getting to as close to off the, as we can. The solar, we would have to move it.
Yeah, because I noticed in the new, there is no solar there.
So it's not on the prints, but it is part of the conversation. Whether we have it on canopies or whether we have it on the roof, we're not quite sure yet exactly how we'll incorporate it. That was one of the things that we did talk with the legislators about. In fact, we had written for a $3 million grant with, or an earmark, with Congressman Auchincloss last year to see if they would give us the earmark to put the solar on canopies over the parking lots. Unfortunately, we didn't get awarded the grant, but it did start the conversation with him that we need to be able to do something with those. We're not 100% sure if they're going back on the roof of the new building. I know it's something that you've looked at, that the load-wise would be able to handle it, or even if the ones that are there right now, in order to be able to keep using them, if they go back to our building. Initially, when the building was built years ago, Mrs. Dowse, who was on our school committee, whose son is on our school committee now, was a science teacher, and back in 1977, Tri-County had solar panels on that roof. And since then, they've gone to the ground, but we could put them back on the roof if we needed to in the meantime while we're building. Yeah, we're not looking to get rid of the solar.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're not a green building.
No, we are a green
Oh,
building.
you are a green
Yes,
building?
we
Okay.
get actually 2 additional reimbursement points. At 56 quoted would have been 54 if we weren't a green building
Okay.
from the state.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
We're also looking at geothermal to add that piece to it too. Yeah.
Anyone else? I see you leaning forward, Jack.
I don't want to disappoint you.
Thank you. I'd feel
Jack
awful like
Severson,
that.
7 Branch Avenue, here in Plainville. Is there any credits if we go all green on this thing? Do you get higher credits for it?
Yeah, so we...
Because I know in building your homes and whatnot, if you go 100% green,
Right.
you get a hell of a bigger credit than, are we doing standard products on these?
What kind of product?
Are we doing standard products? Like I want a ton of bricks, I want 100 yards of cement. But what I'm saying, how can we qualify this to go green and get better reimbursement?
Yes.
Maybe you can straighten that out for me.
Yeah, so we have maxed out, we're at LEED Silver, we have the 2 points that we can qualify to get for being a green building, we did get.
Oh, you did get it already?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's part of it.
In
Yeah.
addition, we may qualify for rebates from the utility companies too. We're going to be an all-electric building in terms of heating, no fossil fuels. So that's another part of being green these days. And so the utility companies,
They kick back and
reward
push
that
back.
with rebates. Yes.
Yeah, it's like if I have a heater in my cell that's green, I'm gonna get some kickback and credits,
Yeah.
yada yada.
But in addition, the other things about being green, the carpets we pick or the paint we pick.
Exactly.
All meet low VOCs and all of that in order to qualify for that environmental category of
Okay.
LEED Silver.
And the thickness of the wall, all of
those
that.
things,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. The current wall, it just seeps the energy out of it, that porous concrete that in
Right.
1973 was beautiful, but it's not so much now, and it's
I was
just
just
not
gonna say,
energy
what kind of
efficient.
walls are gonna be built to separate these different classes? I mean, you got banging on your right, and you got stoves on your left cooking, I mean,
Yeah, so the banging on the right is also part of that program. There is a separation classroom that they would teach their theory in, that separates, and then the hallway, and then the academic
We
classrooms.
do have an acoustical consultant on our team who actually helps check those things. So we have concrete block walls between the noisy shop. We actually have vestibules when you enter the shop.
Do you
It's
foam
not
up
just a
the-
single door, there's 2 doors to go
those
through.
blocks you're talking about, are they hollowed blocks that you
They're
would
filled.
fill with green?
They're filled solid
Okay.
when between the 2 noisy shops. So
Okay.
we definitely take that into account.
So we have some savings with the percentages that you can go green on.
We do. If you
Would it be
think about
substantial?
2% times the eligible costs are somewhere in the vicinity of 150 million of the project, so 2% of that is what, $3 million? So that's,
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
Is there anybody else before Mr. Cates goes again? Come on. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance first.
Also, the 72 Charlene Lane. When you guys had the layout of the school up there, I noticed, I have a question on it. You have the traditional building shops and the automotive shops and machinery shops on one side. Have you guys looked at how you guys are doing the layout, especially with the bridge over now with a lot of these shops? Especially the electrical shop, because you had the carpentry shop away from the automotive. When you're doing all the solar, battery connections and electrical cars now, the electrical shop is pulled in a lot more into that. And then if you know what I mean, if you do that layout now, eventually later, you're gonna probably have to modify the building to get the power and the cabling and everything else bridged over from the electrical shop.
well, one of the things that we look at nowadays, because shops evolve so much over time, and we are thinking about the buildings are gonna last 50 years, we actually put in more power, more compressed air into all those shops, so that they're almost kind of universal in terms of the infrastructure, so that, you know, for instance, what used to be an auto body shop is no longer at Tri-County, and that space is being converted, and so if that were to happen in the future, that some, you know, automotive goes to all electric cars, and
I'm just
no
saying,
longer
because you see a
need,
lot
you know,
more,
certain facilities that might evolve.
Cross-curriculum.
because the electricians now, I mean, I went
Into
to
everything.
vocational school back in 1990, so we're going back a ways.
Yeah.
And we were strictly just building codes. It was electrical wire, industrial, everything else. Now it's a lot more automotive cross, you know what I mean? There's a lot more cross-breeding into it.
Right.
Where a lot of the old, like carpentry, is still a lot of traditional building structures and finished furniture and stuff like that. The dependencies start to swap with a lot of these shops around.
Right.
Versus the other thing. And then my second question is, in the design today, especially with the technology changing so much, are you guys considering modularization of the shops?
Well, that's what we're talking about in terms of trying to make the shops as universal as possible, both in size and in infrastructure, so that, you know, even though the state has regulations on square footage per student, sometimes the enrollment in, you know, one shop may be a little bit lower than the one next to it, and rather than make the shop smaller, we try to make them relatively modular in the sense of you know,
I'm not thinking that way. What I'm thinking is, like, for instance, in the electric shop. When I was there, we made multiple changes in the shop system and structure. We went from motor controls to electronic controls to housing and wiring, and we had to adapt. Every 2 to 3 years, we were knocking walls down, putting walls up, restructuring the shop. It would be nice if that was taken into consideration today, especially with all of these shops. You know what I mean?
It's constantly
changing.
it is,
Like
it is.
machinery, now
Yeah.
you've got lathes, you've got, you know what I mean?
Everything, right.
You got
One of the
CNC
things we
machines,
do-
you got all that stuff, and those machines intertwine and change over time so much.
Like, if you go into a machine.
Run a bus bar down, 2 of them in an electrical shop like that, or in several of those shops, so that you can draw a lot of power at, you know, sort of universally throughout the entire shop at any location, so that you could, you know, take down wiring booths and make it a motor control center if that's what it needs to happen.
I'm just asking if you guys
Yeah,
take
no,
that
you're right,
consideration,
because that is something, right? What a machine shop looked like when you were in school.
Oh, it's completely
right?
different. It's completely different.
It's
The
an
electrical shop's so different.
advanced manufacturing now, right? Even the lights are different, right? It's just the lighting in the room is different. So we are, if you looked at this floor plan 10 years ago, it would probably be different than it is, you know. But we're constantly looking at the modernization of the programs. What can we do to make them so that the kids can go out into the workforce and be employable today, not yesterday, right? Because it's a big, as you're saying, it's all evolves all the time.
No, I'm just asking because I look at this, I graduated from Plainville.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna put it out there.
They're also in the pipeline for.
I know,
Yeah.
they've been on the pipeline a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's probably the first. But I'm saying, this is the classic shop layout. It was at Diamond Vogue, it's in Tri-County, you know what I mean? And like I said, these shops are evolving considerably.
Yeah.
Especially the electrical technology shop and the automotive sector right now. You know what I mean, the metal fab and the engineering technology, they're always adapting all the time because it's cutting edge. You know what I mean, like the metal fab, they're doing printing. metal printing now and all that stuff.
So your thought would be to flip those two, flip where
Yeah,
carpentry
because
and
the
electrical is.
The electrical would be closer to the automotive, so
Yeah.
if you have to do solar panel connections or any wiring, the shop would get the technology built into it, and you could easily bridge across the hallway versus having to go all the way over the carpentry section.
Yeah.
Just, again, food for thought.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burns? Sorry, Mr. Webster. You'll be next. Yep.
Good evening, Mike Burns, 2 Hillside Road. Just curious, have the collective we, so everybody, not just in this room, but in, even in the other towns and in the folks doing the study, have we looked at how this number, which will ultimately be, let's call it $400 million by the time we pay for all the financing and such. Let's use some round numbers. If we do 40 years of construction life, right? We got 1,000 students in the school. Is that the school population?
1,000 students.
1,000 students. So we're graduating 250 a year.
Roughly, yeah.
Just curious how that's going to break down. I mean, that's going to be, $40,000 if I'm doing my math right per student over this time frame.
Over 30 years.
All right, I was using a 40-year timeline of the school, so I'm just trying to get a sense of the dollars per student for the construction cost and the dollars per student for the operating cost, and how that compares to, for example, King Philip. And I don't know if we're in a position to come up with those numbers now, but that would help me come to a better thought on, is this worthwhile money or not? I mean, are we going to be 10 times the cost per student to send someone to Tri-County versus King Philip? So I just wish I knew the answer to that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how best to do it. I don't think today's the forum for that, but if that's...
I don't have that, but I can get it for you.
So, yeah, the reason these schools were regionalized, so that the type of specific education didn't fall on the burden of one community in these areas where it's smaller towns, It's not the city of Lynn. And the city of Lynn has their own VOTEC school. City of Brockton has their own VOTEC school, and go on with the cities. But the regional VOTECs, 28 of them in the Commonwealth, were put together so that the communities would pool their resources to be able to pay for the students, right? And
understood.
And that you're not having to build these programs, under the law, students are entitled to a vocational education. So
Understood.
Yeah,
so just more for a comparison's sake.
So,
And
yeah.
I'm a fan of the vocational school, and I have a son who graduated at Norfolk Aggie, and they're in a similar position.
Right, right.
So I guess that's not my, certainly not complaining.
I can tell you that from an annual per student assessment number, not talking about construction capital expenses like a new school, the KP per student cost is comparable to the Tri-County per student per year cost. They're in the same order of magnitude. I don't know them exactly, but they're not that far off. This will effectively double the cost of the cost. Our cost for the capital assessment is going to be about the same as our cost
our 100
for
kids
sending
a year to
our 100 kids. Yeah. But that'll happen. That's what happens with this one. What happens when we build a new KP?
But yes, but we must have, we're paying some of that already for
We're still paying
all
all
the
that.
big work we've done at KP. So I think it might help people having that number, what we're paying per student.
I'll take that as a request, and I'll work on that.
But otherwise, the fact that we're looking at new as opposed to renovating, that's the takeaway from all these meetings, right? I don't know that I've been to one where it hasn't been the case, right? I think the market is set that way, the rules are set that way. So that's of no surprise to anybody that the numbers all come out close or in favor of new construction.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a surprise to the man in green behind you, because he was adamantly opposed to it, and we went back and forth and round about it, because he was, and the committee was not of that opinion. Yeah. at all, so.
But once you start peeling away the layers,
Yeah.
I don't think it's anyone's surprise.
You start with an addition renovation, the price came in, I'm like, see? And they had an order of magnitude for a new building, and I went, I can never sell that to stakeholders. Then the designers go in and go, well, did you consider this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And it just keeps growing. And they're like, and there's so much unknown. And the cost of the building kept coming down as we don't need this, we can do without this, we can work this as a package. And then when they get within 10%, you're like, well.
But that's typical for.
Even that 10% hurts me. I mean, I pay taxes too.
Understood.
And
that's the way they.
But you know, I'm in the car business. When it gets to be within 10% to fix your car, or you can buy a new one, go buy a new one. Because it will be flawless for the next umpteen years. That's what we're looking at. We don't expect repairs. You know, again, in all these years, we haven't come to you going, we need money. We're having problems. We've done the best we can with what we have. We have a building full of students who do this stuff, so it's like, get to work. And they do a good job. And our facilities crew is top shelf. So people come and go, geez, this building looks great. I go, well, you know, we can hide flaws, we can paint over stuff.
Wax the floors and put the bright
With
lights
the
on.
proverbial
Everything looks
polish,
good.
you know
Yes,
what?
Yes.
But
No, my point being, yeah, I don't think anyone's surprised that the new construction cost is within 10% of the renovation cost. Just the way they tend to work out for these projects.
It's interesting that we've been refused by the MSBA a number of times, and we weren't expecting it to come in. It was kind of a nonchalant, send the application back in. They always give you reasons why your building's not bad enough. You don't have, you know, you can't do an emergency renovation because for this reason. There was all these reasons, and we were just like, okay, well, we're gonna have to do what we do. And then all of a sudden they call us, and at the same time the economy changed. And you're on the clock, and that is kind of how it is. Somebody had asked earlier what would happen, can we go back to MSBA? We could ask them, and they may reconsider. But it's highly unlikely that they will let us go back to zero and come back through. And that we probably would be done.
Because you're fighting with everybody else in the pipeline, and you can't pull one out and
I
give you
say this all
special
the time.
treatment. Yeah.
They have $3 billion. They promised it to you, to you, to you. I'm like, wait a minute, that's $9 billion. We can't all have this money, but they show it to you. So hopefully we're the lucky ones.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Webster?
Hi, Reed Webster, 5 Busby Street. First of all, I want to say I'm a proud father of a graduate 2018. It was one of the best school experiences of my son's life. His education from his IEP was far superior, managed and at that school than others.
What program was he?
He was in the automotive program. He's still in the industry. He's finding his way around, but he really excelled there academically as a result of being able to find his niche as a hands-on person. I also must be very clear, and I don't mean to be the cynical one. I'll apologize for that in the beginning, but I don't support this project. And I'll tell you a little bit why. The building was never a concern to my son. It always looked beautiful when we went in there, and I was really appalled at the pictures that I saw up there. We had a situation where a couple of people in this room were pretty heavy advocates at our local schools for that it wasn't being taken care of properly. And the schools kept telling us, oh, you're not giving us enough money. And we kept saying, yeah, that's nonsense. And, well, we have this project, that's this amount of money, we have this project, this amount of money. And then about this time last year, our new facilities department came and said, we fixed everything that they told us was going to be $250,000, and I'm using an exaggerated number there, and we did it for 46 cents. And it's like, wow, like, what's the story here? So when I see, $3 tiles not being replaced, when you have a school full of kids that could learn from that experience, or I see a hole in the wall that doesn't get repaired and gets left open And no, you know, you have a whole shop that could go in and put together a metal grate as a shop experience and cover it if you needed to get access to it again. So I don't really feel like I want to put out $586 million with interest for a building that's not going to be taken care of in the same way.
I think that the holes were just to demonstrate that it was behind them that we had the issues.
Well, what about all the tiles that you showed?
not-
Go back to
well,
the pictures, and
you know.
you've got all these tiles with water spots on them and flipped out and not even put back into place and not replaced. And that's the same experience that we had in our local schools that are only 20 years old. You know, just to give you an example, there was a faucet that couldn't be repaired supposedly, and they shut it off and put plastic over it for 7 years, and it turned out to be 2 washers.
Right, yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah.
So when I looked
no,
at those pictures, I was really quite appalled, and I don't really have I don't have an interest in going into debt to pay higher taxes, and you know, doubling the student cost.
Yeah, again, I
And
think
then-
that what we were trying to demonstrate was that when that building was built in 1973, everything was encased in concrete. So you have to hammer through to get to anything, including the pipes underneath and the sewer, the water pipes in the walls when they break. You know, the water will come collapsing through the tile, but you don't know where it's coming from, right?
Yeah, I'm
So,
actually in
yeah.
the water mitigation business
So
myself,
you know
so I
how
understand
that
how
works,
this
yeah.
works to a certain extent. It's not my primary business, but, you know, I understand how that works, but what I got out of it is you can't replace a $3 tile.
Yeah, sorry,
Well,
that's
you
not,
can't
yeah.
cover a hole.
Yeah.
That's what I got out of it, and you're not taking care of the building the way that I would have envisioned you to with 250 volunteers in the construction building
Yeah,
there.
no, that's, I'm sorry,
So-
that's not what we weren't going for that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry
well,
that it
maybe you
came
might
out that
wanna,
way.
you know.
Yeah.
That's also not an accurate representation, because a number of our students are.
Then why are you highlighting it?
Medical assisting, dental assisting, culinary, they're not in the construction trades.
Well, how many kids are?
How many kids are?
Yeah.
Well, first off, like, general construction is not a shop anymore. It was in '77, but we don't practice masonry anymore.
Yeah, no, but I think that the point we were trying to make was that when the building was built, everything was covered, and that was the idea then. And then when it breaks, this is what you're left with, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, a little concerning that it couldn't be repaired for another 20 minutes or half an hour, or even an hour's worth of work, and $40 worth of materials. That doesn't make sense to me. And so now you're here exploiting it, and now I'm the nut because I pointed it out that you're not taking care of the building.
I think exploiting it is harsh. We're just trying,
Well,
we're
I'm
trying to
harsh.
fix
That's
a broken building, right? You know, it is,
Okay.
you know, we're there every day.
Yeah.
So, you know, we know what we're dealing with, you know,
Okay.
and.
And then my question really is centered around, we were told that, I assume it's for-profit, the night school. I don't know that it is or it isn't. It uses the building half the time. And how does that lower the cost of sending our children there?
Yeah, so it's a relatively new program that we're trying to get off the ground, the adult ed pieces of it.
You've had adult ed there
So
for
we've had
25
some.
years.
We've had some
at
adult
least,
ed.
that I know of.
Yeah, we've had some adult ed, and then recently, the last number of years, it's dwindled down to only the nursing program and cosmetology. And then we've had the, like flower arranging and those sorts of things, which don't really make, much money. But now what we're trying to do is increase the number of adult ed programs. Yeah.
And so how would that, I mean, you're asking us to double our contribution.
Yeah, so
per
ideally,
child.
if we could, right now we have a grant program through the Commonwealth Corps, it's called, that will help pay for a teacher for the course and try to solicit people who are underemployed to come for training. And our hope is that if we can get it off the ground, that it would help offset some of the space, some of the tuition for the towns. That was the idea of trying to be able to grow that out, is to be able to do exactly that. We're advertising right now we need a teacher for automotive, and we're hoping, we have HVAC that we just opened, for an adult ed, so that's the idea, is to be able to use that.
And so is there a plan to grow that program, and are there projections on how that might lower the $39,000?
No, we don't, no, we don't have projects, we're not a for-profit institution, yeah.
As a businessman in the automotive industry, there's only an amount you can charge before they're gonna go to a different location, go to school. Trying to offset.
No, that's not my question, whether, how much you're gonna charge. I'm asking you, have you projected out that we have a plan
No.
to do this? We have goals that we're trying to set, and we're trying to generate X amount of money from.
No,
Do
the
you
answer
have
is
that
no.
plan?
No.
Because there's been lots of we don't knows tonight.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, there is no plan. We have not done projections on what it could possibly look like. We're just hoping that it takes off, and then maybe we'd be able to do something with it with the adult ed piece. But no, we have not. We're a public high school is what we really are.
Okay. I think that's my questions, and I appreciate your time.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Mr. Bergevine.
Like this meeting about it all speaking.
Don't start speaking.
Oh, I'm not. I'm gonna get thrown out. Dale Bergevine, 428 South Street. Totally see that you probably do need a school. My point is, and I hope, I see the Sun Chronicle reporter here, that he puts in the paper that 11 towns this is gonna affect.
Right.
And I can tell you right now, every town is broke. It was a very poor rollout at the time. I know you need a school, but I know my taxes are high, and the 11 other towns. And I didn't realize the 285 doesn't count the interest. So what would the interest over the 30 years or 40, whatever it's going to be, is the total cost of the school? Can I have a solid number?
So it's 205.
205.
Not 285.
Okay.
It's probably $150 million.
On top of it.
On top of it. So you're looking at $350 million.
Depending on the interest rate, but yeah.
Right,
Okay.
which can go up, which can go down, and which is why we play the game of when you bond, based on interest rates.
What's the percentage of it? Because I calculated it a few minutes ago. It was $190 million on $200 million.
At what rate?
At 5.
We're not at 5.
What's the rate?
4.
Okay, so 4 was going to take it down.
And what if it goes down to 3? I mean, a couple of years ago,
What if we go into hyperinflation and everything that you buy,
I think,
Yeah, we don't know. What are the-
excuse me, Mr.
I'll offer my
Bergevine
time. He's got good questions. He can
has
back
the
up.
floor here.
Okay, so,
But I'm open for questions.
Yeah.
Let's try not to badger as we ask questions.
I don't think I'm bad.
You're not.
I'm not badgering.
You're not badgering.
Thank you.
I'm just looking ahead.
So, my concern is that, okay, I thought we were gonna start paying in 2027. Now I'm hearing we might start paying for X amount in 24 or 25.
Certainly 25 and 26.
And then 26, and then when this school's finished in 4 years, when's the max
27.
gonna start hitting us that we have to pay?
Yeah, we anticipate 27. Yeah.
27,
Yeah.
gives me time to get out. That, yeah, that's it. And I'm gonna be really nice to you tonight, not say a word. I'm just concerned, I'm really disappointed. This is probably one of the biggest projects that came in front of our town, and there's 16 people here that are residents. Where's the camera? You gotta be kidding me. You'll be the first one complaining about taxes going up, you know? And my son went to Tri-County, and I appreciate Tri-County, but the timing, interest rates, home heating oil, fuel, groceries, and we have tons of seniors in this town that are living on Social Security check. And we're gonna ask them to anywhere, because you're gonna give us the numbers, right, after this?
Yeah.
You're gonna give us numbers that an average household could go up, and a $400,000 household could go up X amount of dollars, or an $800 million house in town could go up. I don't know where everybody thinks this money's coming from.
Right, so there are two, you raise it locally or you ask the state for more, right? And that's where we come in with the piece that we've been hammering home about the legislation and working with the legislature to say we need to, the longer we wait, the more expensive it is, and that's the
Totally
fact of
understand
it,
that.
right?
That's
So,
what
you
happened
know,
with this
if,
building here.
and you know, 3 years ago, when Cape Cod Tech opened, it was $128 million. Where are we now, right? So we have to do something, and I think we just still collectively work together to try to get the money.
I recently toured Waltham High School. They're building a new building. It's almost the same size, 285,000 square foot, traditional, and it's coming in at the same price. Oh, it's 400,000 square foot, and it's the same price. I'm like, how can this be? They said they started working on it 4 years ago. That's the difference. So if we wait 5 years, 7 years, what's gonna happen?
I totally understand that, what's happening today in the school.
You never know what's happening.
I can tell you right now.
Well, then you can bet on it and make a lot of money.
Well, I'm not gonna have any, but it's
If you know how to play the game better than everybody else.
I didn't say I did, but think about this. I mean, our taxes go up every year, at least 2.5. And now we're going from an average Plainville student is about, what, $19,000 a year? 17? And we're gonna be paying for vocational school at almost 40?
Well, probably 30.
I'm asking, please, I don't interrupt you, now I'm getting mad.
Just to correct, what I said was approximately double. It's going to be somewhere between a 12.7 and 14.3 on top of what we're paying now, depending on the interest rates.
With a third-ranked population going to the school.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that, that's where the.
Oh, no, I get it. We need carpenters, we need electricians, I get all that.
Well, they choose to go there. Nobody
Absolutely.
makes them go there.
No,
It's by choice.
I'm not arguing your point. I'm arguing the point is that,
It's expensive,
there you go.
right?
But they don't go to college. We set a number,
I am.
a percentage to college,
Yeah.
but your child is ready to go out the door.
They still have to do apprenticeship with electricians.
It depends on what
Yeah,
they,
well, they're
yeah.
gonna put years in, that's correct, but they're getting paid the whole time.
You can get up there and do it, okay? I'm on my,
It's not a question.
not trying to be rude.
No.
No, but it's just bad timing, that's all I'm saying. I'm telling everybody, I was at Common Farms today, again, tonight, and they said, you go to meetings, and they said, what meeting? About Tri-County, what about Tri-County? This is like the 100th person I've seen. I've been in this town 65 years, and no one knows about this. It's a sad roll-up, and I don't know if it's you, I don't know if it's you. It's like a secret little thing going through, do you want to build a new school, yes or no? Doesn't say anybody's going to pay for it. And I don't know all the languages in between, because I saw the legal ad in the Sun Chronicle. A lot of people don't get the Sun Chronicle anymore.
Yeah.
No offense to the reporter over there, but I mean, I just don't understand the role, the timing, the position this country is in. It's just mind-boggling.
We've been applying long before the economy turned down, and once you get accepted, you're in, and that was a discussion, what are we gonna do? But just not sure what's gonna happen in the future either. It could get worse, it could get better.
Well, the other night I talked to the selectmen, they said, this isn't Newton, Dover, or anywhere else, this is Plainville. And our taxes are gonna be as much as Newton, Dover, and everywhere else.
Dover's very cheap.
Thank you. Well, then let's get
But
there.
their house, well, the house price is very high. When the median house price is $2 million, you know, by comparison.
Well, thank you for time, I appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you,
But
Ms.
again,
Bergwijn.
I'll just reiterate that I think that with the number of communities that are in the pipeline for vocational school buildings, that if they could all just work together with the legislature, there's hundreds of them, and say, hey, look, you've got to help us, you know, and, you know, the option is to not do anything, and then that's costly, right? So we're not going to close Tri-County.
I just have one more question. If I can
Sure.
You were talking like $200 million, whatever it was. Why didn't we update the 165 million, number one? So we vote, tell them to vote no again. Then what happens? We get to vote on that, or we don't have to say the matter, we have to just go do it on our own. We have no say as a taxpayer?
We're repairing, it's straight repairs. It just repairs the building. KP doesn't ask permission to do repairs. It's all the
It would not be all at once.
Just to be clear, it wouldn't all be once, but it's repairs. It's not reimbursable under MSBA either, so it's not a cheap, easy way for us to go. Yes.
Question.
But you had a point to make.
I do point to make. My first point is, you didn't choose this time, right? Kelly Connerton again.
You only have to say it the first time.
Okay, sorry, yeah. You didn't choose this time to decide we need a new school today.
Well, to tell you the truth, I chose to come to work for them when I knew they were building a new school or a remodel, so I did choose to jump into this, yes. But no, as far as the As far as, did Tri-County choose this point in time to say, hey, let the building, let's see what happens now? I mean, we're at the mercy of what's going on, and in a situation where we know we have to do something.
And
Yeah.
obviously, since it's been years,
Yeah.
we've been trying to do it a better time.
I think 2015 was the first time with, if the records that I see, the first statement of interest was 2015. Yeah, which would have been a significantly different number, right? Yeah.
So as a mom of two recent Tri-County graduates, my younger son actually tried to go to KP first and experienced much of what has been in the news, quite frankly. And so Tri-County opened their doors to him. But what I will say is he's happy and in college and did the college track, and that was great. My older son, graduated 3 years ago. Within 2 years of graduating, and please keep in mind that 18 months of those 2 years were COVID lockdown, he had a stable job. He was making more than his mother with 2 advanced degrees. With unspeakable college debt, me. He has 0. Fast forward 1 more year, so he has been out of school at high school, less than 3 years. He's still in the same company. He had the vice president of the company come in and convince him to stay with the company because he had lined up a different job and was going to leave this company. He had no idea this was a big deal. He came home and told me, and I was like, do you have any idea? They doubled his salary, basically. He has a 401k with employer match. He is on the disability insurance. He has his own health insurance because he makes more than his mother now. Significantly more, again, with 0 college debt. He's been out of school for 3 years. He graduated in 2020.
I think,
He asked, not Plainville, he can't.
excuse me, I think it's great. I don't want this to turn into an advertisement.
I'm sorry, but I did
That's
say
okay.
that it
That's all
wasn't a
right.
question, it was a
Yeah.
testimonial.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
To Mr. Bergevine's earlier point about how many people are here tonight and how quiet this project seems to have been, we've endeavored on the select board to give updates about this project monthly for over a year now. And scheduling this event and scheduling Dr. McGuire came probably 10 months ago as well, 9 months ago. I'm not sure what else we need to do, but we need to get the word out. This is an important vote. It's an important decision for the school. It's an important decision for the town. So if you can spread the word, and if people have ideas for how I can get more word out to people, I'm all ears.
We've had
So.
multiple events in other towns, even something like the Franklin Festival, right? With the booth up there and through social media. I know everybody's not on social media, but there's been a big social media push for, the information. And then the town meetings. We've been at a lot of our town's town meetings talking about it. We'll be back to Walpole's town meeting in 2 weeks to talk to them about it. So it's, we're trying as best as we can, so, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Gates, you had a statement or question? Question?
Statement.
Yeah. Are you answering a question, someone else's question, or?
The assessments. I just want to make one point that our passionate parent made was that, yes, thank you. On these numbers on the right, she asked, are these valid for now? And they're going up because of inflation and everything else. If we vote this down and we come back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later, those numbers are going to be multiplied by a factor of I don't know what. But it's going to be a lot more than this, and we're still going to be in the same situation that we're in now.
Okay.
So we get a shiny new building now at this price, or we kick it down the road and we get a shiny new building at a much higher price.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
everybody
Gates.
else. That's my only statement. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Parker.
And by the way, I want to say thank you to the superintendent who has ushered through other projects like this and is helping us all along the way. So thank you very much.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mrs. Parker.
I'd like to address the debt service, the interest again. And I remember what we all learned a while ago when mortgage interest rates fell so dramatically and how many of us scurried and got the lowest
Refinanced,
rates. And
yeah.
we're talking about 2.5 or whatever. Municipal debt is that way too. Once we get financial advice from the people that we pay, and they settle us in on a rate, once they're going to be tracking that, and if it comes to the point where it's advantageous for you, for all of us, on behalf of all of us, to refinance your debt, you'll be able to do that. So we'll never get more debt, a higher rate. We'd wait until we could get a lower rate.
That's right.
And that would be available to us. So that 150 might wind up to be less in the end. So that
Yeah.
just might be one little kernel of good luck for us.
That's a great point. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Webster.
I'm sorry, I just caught up earlier, I didn't intend that. Was my original question actually was. So it would be nice for the citizens to be able to compare all the different options. And one of the options was rebuilding at the 165, and we know that number's not going to be good. It really would have been worthwhile for us to understand what that new number is. And then I think to bring some clarity to something that was said a few minutes earlier, if we vote no on the new building, and we vote no on renovating the building, then you would have to repair the building, and there would be certain thresholds that you would still have to come out for a vote later, right?
So anytime we have to bond
Yeah.
money, we would have to come out for a vote.
Okay.
So it's going to depend on, so the tricky part is trying to renovate, and then when that renovation reaches the threshold that kicks in the mandate to address code.
Yeah.
And then we would have to, I mean, we don't have money like that. You know, we would have to come out for a bond even on that.
Yeah.
And then the part would be is that we would have a partially renovated, up to code, 50-year-old building.
Okay,
Right.
so, in your view, that's not optimal, but, there's plenty of towns with 7,500-year-old schools within a slingshot of here. And so my question is, you would have to prioritize if you were renovating the school.
That's correct, yeah.
If you didn't get an initial vote. And have you gone through that exercise to prioritize what these projects would be if you don't get this vote, and how you would prioritize it and what those items might be, so that, we could have a comparison, because the benefit of maybe we lose the $80 million, but the benefit could be is that we could stretch this thing out 50 years in payments because you're only doing small projects at a time. Is that you can't, you're not going to be able to do every one of these projects because you're not going to get the bond. So you could, I don't know what the threshold is. So it'd be interesting to see how many of these projects could be done without going to a bond.
So I don't want to confuse people that that's part of the question, right? Because that's not part of the question that is on the ballot on October 24th.
Of course, that's not the question on the ballot. That's the question that people have in their minds, right? It's like, how do we do this cheaper? To go back to Mr. Bergevin's point, is that this is just a horrible time for the people of Plainville who just came out of a financial crisis and are looking at $100 million worth of other projects that need to be done. People need to have water and bathe, and we can't connect to the sewer in our town, and we're going to run a tip project down the middle of the town. So we've got 10, we're juggling 12 or 15 different priorities here in our town, right. And so it would be good to understand how it works. And again, going back, there's been a lot of well, we don't know that, or, you know, we stopped when we found out it was gonna be close to the same amount, we stopped figuring out what, you know, the alternative is. And, you know, people wanna be smart and prudent, but there is a benefit to stringing this out over a period of time for towns like ours, because we just have other priorities that are, you know, I'm in business, I own my own business, and I understand competing dollars, and, you know, that we don't want to have to choose between fixing our water and sending children to school.
Right, no,
And we've
yep.
just had to give $2 million, $1.8 million to our local school system, and then, you know, then they still had a couple $100,000 left over, and so now they've got $2 million more to spend this year. That's an enormous hike. We have lots of competing projects, so it would be really nice to understand what all the alternatives are and what all the alternatives cost before we vote 2 weeks from now. And it's not fair to the people who are voting to not have any of those answers.
I think the unfortunate thing is a lot of those questions you're asking and the answers that should have driven from them, we, all of us, frankly, should have been asking 15, 16 months ago when the school building committee was weighing these options.
Yeah, and I think when we did a presentation, when you came last and gave a presentation, a lot of those questions were asked. And, and you know, the promises to get back to us, nobody got back to us with these answers. No. Until today. And, you know, Stan comes up once a week and you know, and once a month and talks to us about it, but he doesn't have all the answers that we ask either.
Mr. Whiteack, you had your hand up next.
Just taking it out of your pocket.
Yeah. Again and again and again.
I won't jump in, Steve, go ahead.
Oh, you can jump in anytime. This is called the hot seat. Everybody has to remember that when I was on the committee about 3 years ago, we decided that while renovations were good, but everybody doesn't understand when you open an onion, there's many layers in it. And what happens is you can think that it's going to cost you $4 million to do something, and it can cost you $5.5 million. So the 165 is you're worried about. Well, no, but
It's $500 million.
it's not 500 million. So-
Interest, Stan.
No,
Interest.
the interest.
Point of order.
Let's let Mr. Whiteack speak, please. He's got the floor at the moment. I know, Mr. Whiteack.
Yeah,
Please
okay.
address our guests.
Okay. What do you call it? No, what happens is, I think that people have to look at it, it's $280 million. You take out the 80 million, it's 200 million. 200 million, if you pay 120 million in taxes, it's in interest, excuse me. You want it to be taxes, Mr. Noble, but it's not. But the idea is, if you take it that way there, then basically you're looking at 330 million. So, I mean, the 500 million I've heard a couple times, I think is exorbitant. And as Kathy just reminded everybody, the interest rate could go down, and we could be back down at 2.5%.
Excuse me, Mr. Whiteack has the floor for everybody else. Thank you.
So the idea is, and I know this is a hot seat, I know that Brian's worked on it many days, the team has worked, Dan's worked on it, Karen's worked on it. So it's going to be actually up to the voters. And yes, as a taxpayer, I should say no, but as a person that's interested in the well-being of the area, you want kids to be educated. And like the lady talked about her son, I mean, I have 2 nephews that just graduated from Tri-County less than 3 years ago, and each of them are making over $125,000 with no college debt. So, I mean, I am close to it in that sense.
Thanks.
So,
thank you for that.
thank you.
We're not here to advertise, so. Mr. McGuire.
Sean McGuire, Road Street. And
And I want to say, it looks like a very exciting plan for the school. It looks like you're putting something together that has an eye to the future, you know, vocational education, like all education is under a great deal of stress from, you know, obviously the modern times are stressful, and I think it looks like it's a beautiful design with some details we worked out, exploiting alternative energy sources, et cetera. That's fantastic. And to my fellow Plainville residents, it's never going to get any cheaper. It'll never get cheaper. So the writing's on the wall. You know, either you pay for the quality of life here, yeah. You pay for the quality of your life. If you don't think it's worth it, then, you know, you vote with your feet, right? You leave town. You go to another state, you do something like that. But if you want to be reimbursed through the state guidelines, you know, and I can't imagine you could get 11 communities to agree on some sort of financing thing outside of the state reimbursement guidelines. I mean, it's silly, but I mean, it's just never going to be cheaper than it is today. So, thank you. Congratulations if it goes through. I think it looks great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Yes, in the back. I didn't catch your name the first time, I'm sorry.
Also, I don't want to make this inflammatory. I'm just asking the question. From the number of the 280, 205, whatever it is, does that include modernization of the shops and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure what was actually in the number. And like I said, I'm not trying to be inflammatory.
Yes,
I'm just
no, it
asking
does,
for,
it does, you know, and that was part of the driver, right,
Yeah.
the new equipment
like
and.
new lifts and all
Oh, yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the Tri-County folks? We'll move on to the next part. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. McGuire.
Oh, thank
and-
you, yes, it
and,
was nice to see you.
all the rest of your
Nice to see you,
team.
Brian.
Yeah, thank you
Okay,
all.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I would remind folks, their website has a ton of information available on the project, on the options they went through to get to this point. Whether you, all meeting minutes, whether you agree with the project or where they've got to or not, there's a wealth of information there. And we do have links to it on our website. Who was I talking to?
You.
I was talking to everybody out there who might want more information.
Bye, thank you all.
Nobody listens to me, it's okay. Don't tell people, Jack.
Bye, thank you.
I didn't bring any yet. Actually, go to the one to the left. the
Bye, thank you.
population. Thank you. So yeah, that one. So just a reminder, and I see our town clerk in the audience right now, and maybe I'll steal her thunder, but the election is October 24th, noon to 8 p.m. in the education and training meeting room at the front of the public safety building, not in the equipment bays like we normally would be, but in the front room. A single question. There's a lot of text on it, but the gist of the question boils down to, are you in favor of building the school or not? We don't have a separate question being asked that same day on how it's going to get paid for. Part of the reason for that is we don't know exactly what it's going to cost yet. We're still trying to, as you heard, trying to find out project cash flow information. When are we going to get hit with assessments? It seems to be changing over the last 3 or 4 months, but they're narrowing down. I did prepare, along with Mr. Noble, some information. We can talk about what this means to Plainville. So the first slide up here shows the 11 communities who are part of the Tri-County Agreement, and the population in 2020 census, and then the fiscal 23 student count, which was the count as of October 1st, 2021, and that's what we were assessed, the percentage we were assessed in the fiscal 2023 annual budget. We are currently in fiscal year 2024, so we're currently being assessed based on the count, student population count from October 1st of 2022, so just 1 year ago, and that's 12%, 113 students, 12.1%. So in a normal year, they look at their essentially, they look at their budget for the year and they figure out what it costs, and we get a bill for 12% of their total, 12.1% of their total costs, and that's what we're paying this year. There will be new student counts. I think our count goes down to 104 is his estimate. So we'll drop a tiny bit probably for fiscal '25, but we're still going to be well north of 10%, somewhere, or probably 11.5% or so. And that will change year to year to year. But what I've done in the next slide is use the current 12.1%. So if we look at the project as it's been scoped out to us, it's a $286 million cost. If you want to think about that, how much of that is our share at 12%, that'd be $34.6 million. So that's what we would be signing up for, a $34.6 million project, or the equivalent of one. It doesn't show up in our town's books that way, but that's what it is. Right now, we have a commitment from, they have a commitment from the MSBA for $81 million, roughly. Could vary a little bit, which means they've got $205 million left to finance. I did these calculations based on a 30-year note. I chose 4 interest rates from 4% to 5.5%, and that showed what an annual payment for the district would be. So, for instance, at the 4.5% interest rate, the district, Tri-County, would be spending $12.5 million per year for that 30-year note. Our share of that, 12% of that, would be $1.5 million. Again, so this is where we would be once they get to the totally, have all the issuance of all the expected notes, or the maximum notes anyway. So this number's probably a fiscal 27 or fiscal 28 number by the time we get to there, but we'll get up there pretty quickly. And this assumes, again, 4.5% interest rate, which drives a lot. It assumes that the state does not come up with any more money. I'm not counting on any more money from the state right now. And it assumes that our share stays around 12% of the student population. All those things, of course, can cause change. So we'd be looking at about $1.5 million per year at the 4.5% interest rate. Just for kicks and giggles, that works out to about $13,500 per student. If you scroll down just a little bit, Brian, if you're curious about how the other towns fare, you can see that Franklin and North Attleboro, who have higher student counts, get hit harder than we do. Of course, they're both much bigger towns than we are. You can see the other towns, Norfolk gets hit for $500,000. They're not thrilled about a $500,000 hit, but they're a bigger and wealthier town than we are. So that's a more palatable hit for them anyway. We are in the unenviable position of having the third most students, but having the third smallest population. If you go to the next slide, so what does that mean for students? And this is a number that Mr. Bergevine asked at the last select board meeting, so I added this bit of data. I don't like thinking of it this way because I don't know how we're going to pay for this, and that's why I use the term impact there. But if we look at the average single-family home in Plainville, current valuation is around $500,000. Average tax bill was $6,264. These were pulled from our tax classification or calculation from last year. So they're going to change in a few months, but anyway, that's where they were. So that $1.5 million Plainville payment represents almost 5% of our tax levy, of our property tax levy for fiscal '24, which was just over 30. It was $30,786,000. So that means that the average impact for that $500,000 house is $310. I call it impact. I don't call it a tax increase because we have choices about what we're going to do to pay this bill if this bill comes due. When it comes due, we could decide as a town that we are going to absorb it in our operating budget and plan accordingly with all our other budgetary needs and lower how much we're spending on police and fire and local schools and library and whatever, however we have to get to balance. But we'll figure out a way to save $1.5 million. That's one option. A second option would be to do what is called a debt exclusion override, which is what we did when we built the Wood and Jackson schools. And we could go out to the voters and say we want to approve a debt exclusion override of something like $1.5 million that's going to pay for what we think it'll cost us for 30 years. And we could do anything we wanted in between those two extremes. We could, for instance, say, you know what, we think we can figure out how to save $800,000 in our budget, but but if we go over that, we'll impact services too much, so maybe we want a smaller debt exclusion override. And kind of split the difference. I don't know, and I'm not advocating any one of those positions yet. We're not in a position to know these numbers well enough to even ask the question, in my opinion, properly. But this is the scale of what we're looking at right now. This is the kind of impact that we're talking about, either $310 extra per house or $310 of services subtracted from town per house if this goes forward. It's not cheap. And anyway, that's what we've got for known, what we know and what we can project based on that. So with that said, I first see if Mrs. Clark or Mr. Noble have anything to add or any questions, but I'll open up the floor to see if we have thoughts about these numbers, thoughts about preferences for finding it in our budget, finding it in an override, splitting the difference, whatever you folks want to talk about. But anyway, Maggie, go ahead.
I mean, the thing I keep thinking about is that we created that new capital stabilization fund last year, and we put in about, what, $900,000 in that account?
$980,000, just under $1 million.
So just under $1 million. So I don't know what our free cash position will be over the next couple of years, but I hope that we will do our best to build that account up prior to this really hitting us. That's kind of my initial take on it.
My personal goal would be to see us add $1 million a year for the next couple of years. I suspect our free cash position will decline in a couple of years, so that'll be a harder choice to make.
Yeah.
But that should be a priority.
But it would be really nice to have a little bit of a nest egg in there to kind of, I don't know, kick the can or
cushion the impact a little.
Yeah, cushion the impact, I guess, because if we did have a kind of a little nest egg built up and we did have to go and ask for debt exclusion, at least maybe it would be less.
Yeah, I think there's no way we're going to save $34 million, our share of that project.
No, certainly not. No.
But to your point, we should be aggressive, I think, and I think we were prudent but aggressive as well last year in saying we're going to put this $1 million aside, and I think we're going to work to do the same thing this year.
I hope so. I mean, that's that if I was a homeowner and this was me, that is exactly what I would do. Is I would try to save every penny I could, with knowing that there's a huge expense coming. I would try to put away as much as I could, and maybe there's some things that we have to do without because we know that this is coming. It's almost impossible to talk about without all of the information.
It's very hard, and express my frustration now that some of the questions about project cash flow, some of the questions about how this is going to get funded and how we will end up being assessed are still.
I guess my real thought too about saving as much as we can is that I think there's a real possibility this is going to pass. We're going to ask for debt exclusion and that's going to fail, and so we're going to have no choice but to absorb it in the budget. And so the more money we have saved up, the less that impact will be. That's kind of my prediction about how it's going to play out.
I have envisioned that same scenario, and that's one of the reasons I don't want, my personal opinion here, and it's way too early, we're not voting on this, we're not making motions, we're not ready for this, but I don't want to be in a position where a debt exclusion override is our full and total answer. It could be a part of the solution maybe.
But we can't count on that.
I don't want to be asking that. We need to make better plans than that. Mr. Noble, do you have anything you want to add before I?
Well, I don't want to, it's a political decision on how you want to fund it, but I would simply state that the debt exclusion, the debt stabilization fund wasn't designed to pay this.
No.
Because even if you figured that, the 1.5 million a year, so that fund wouldn't even make it you wouldn't even
Right.
make it 2 years.
No,
So you'd wipe that out. That was designed so we wouldn't have to borrow money for police cars or DPW trucks or,
Understood.
so that was the intent of that article. I admit to you that we have to do what we have to do, but
That was the original intent. The question, the hope is also that using our capital money more wisely in terms of how we purchase things will lower other expenses. It maybe makes it more able for us to afford if we have to do something here. And that it's certainly not nearly enough. We would have to be looking at ultimate new growth. We'd have to be looking at budget cuts in certain areas. I don't see any way around that, but Mr. Birch, fine.
Just going off this
I-
whole.
I-
you just keep
I'm
doing-
going to get scolded if you don't go to the
I
mic.
gotta go-
I'm sorry.
More emails. All right.
Oh, I'm going to get more emails, don't worry.
My question is this, and I just want to go off base a little bit of this, that's all.
Yeah.
If you give you a little leeway. All right, so let's just say it's $310 for the average tax person in town. We've got a water project. That could be another $400 per household. And what else do we have? There's like 3 big projects coming up in Plainville, right? And I'm not trying to go off base, I'm just trying to add it all up.
We're going to have, so we got a water treatment plant
24
and
million.
well. I don't think our costs are going to be that high, but anyway.
Well, they doubled it last time.
I know, but let's-
Went from 12 to 20, what?
don't worry.
Okay.
But
There's
say
another
20,
tax-
say
there's
20
another
million,
tax
so.
increase or an override. What other major projects we have going on in town?
Gonna need some school roofs.
School
both
roofs.
In KP and in our own schools.
I thought we had some other, besides the well,
TIP project.
the tip project. You know,
The TIP project,
okay.
well, the TIP project,
Gonna have to spend
Well, I'm
some.
just saying,
Spend some money,
in the
but
next
that's not
4
gonna be
years, we could be looking at
this
an
scale.
average house in Plainville going up $600-700 a year. More, okay, 1,000, whatever, okay?
I would say 600, because
Okay.
what you're talking about is doubling this.
Okay, and I'm gonna get up and leave after I make this comment, is that it's sad that we're more people here worried about a bike lane than we do about a $34 million project.
I have a hard time disagreeing with that. Mr. Wydack had his hand up first. I'm sorry, Mr. Webster.
What was the comment on Katie's school roofs?
Well,
We've been warned by KP that they're gonna be looking for roofs. Year 2,
Couple of years.
yeah.
and how old is that building?
I don't have that data in front of me at the moment.
Thank you.
It hasn't been officially asked for. It hasn't, we don't know the price, so don't ask us those things.
And basically, I guess this does enter into the picture. I have a question, but how many more years do we have on that school for note?
Which school?
King Philip, because,
I don't have that
I don't know.
information.
okay. Because, I mean, it's been,
We're done paying for our schools.
yes, our school's just finished this
Just
year,
finished, oh.
right? Okay, but we still
got
got maybe another
12 more years on these 2 buildings.
12 more years. And I guess that was the lead, what I was asking is, basically, under the stabilization or the money that we get from the Golden Goose, we have a
Gross gaming
golden,
revenue.
we have a Golden Goose in town.
Yeah.
If
Well,
we
we have 2
get,
of them, but anyway.
yeah, well, that's the biggest one, the racetrack. And if we get the gaming, the table games at the casino, would that be enough to almost offset
No.
this? Why?
There's not enough revenue in that.
You don't think,
No, I know, it's gonna do something, Dan, but it's not gonna solve our immediate problems. But if you win the lottery tonight,
if I win the lottery, I'll pay for the school, all right?
okay.
That's a
Y'all
guarantee.
heard him.
If I win the lottery
Here's the
tonight,
problem, Stan, you
I-
have to buy a ticket.
I bought a ticket. Okay, wait, seriously though, Brian, in all respect, the money that comes into this, for these buildings.
Yes.
That are so beautiful, we got, what, how many more years to pay? 12?
12 more years.
12 more years. The fact is that, wouldn't there be a significant jump with the table games, and wouldn't this help offset this, or?
It would help. It would help. I don't think we should, I don't think we could predict.
Gamble on that, okay.
I don't think we could predict enough to offset $1.5 million a year.
Okay.
You have an
Yeah.
interesting point though, right? Because if these buildings in 12 years are falling off, then it's just the first 12 years that we really need to worry about, right?
That's right, and that's what I was trying to make my point.
Stanley will be in his 90s by then, we'll never get enough money.
No, but I mean, like, that kind of, when you
No.
think about it that way, that's a different perspective.
Well, yeah, if we get the table games and we have money coming in for that, and then all of a sudden, we have 12 more years on this, it would help that
But
situation.
like, after the 12 years,
Yeah.
that frees up that,
Oh, it frees up, how many, how,
yeah.
But I was
$2 million a year.
planning on
2 million a year frees up.
1.9 a
Yeah,
year.
well, let's
Yeah.
call it 2 million a year and 12 years. Thank you, Mrs. Clark.
That's a
That
good
was a
point, though.
very, you were right on target on that. Okay. Well, so basically out of the situation is, let's hope that the table games get approved sooner than later. And talk to your legislator.
From your lips to God's ear, Stan, or the governor's. Pick your pick.
All right,
Whoever
thank you.
can make it happen.
Yeah, I'd love it to happen
So I feel compelled to respond to Stan's optimistic view of the host community agreement. Read Webster 5 Bugby Street again and again. It wasn't long ago that we were touting all the money that we were going to get from pot, and that the legislature decided that we could only collect money on a host community agreement for marijuana based on the impact to our community. And we've pretty much concluded that there's zero impact of the racetrack to our community. So it could easily go the opposite way, where the legislator says, well, we can eliminate host community agreements for casinos also.
So just let me respond to that point before you move on.
Yeah.
The legislature did not eliminate host community agreements, but limitations
Well, yeah.
on the funds associated with a cannabis host community agreement that had to, that your impact fees had to be matched by actual impact. In the case of the host community agreement for Plain Ridge, this is a gross gaming revenue payment. It's not related to community impact. It's not related to anything else other than a calculation of how much revenue they gain from gambling in your town.
Yes, and when we established...
And it's not set by the legislature. It's set by a negotiated agreement between Plain Ridge.
But I think your point is they can pull the carrot away at any time.
Yes, and just
The
to...
state can't.
So you clarified it, and I'll just, you correct me again if I'm wrong. When we first negotiated the host community agreements for marijuana distribution, it worked the same way. And then they came in later and said that it had to be an impact.
It didn't work the same way. It was
You are
always.
correct.
I am correct. Thank you.
It was always.
All right, so...
No, I disagree with that. It was there was always, what
Well,
they
you have
did
to
was.
trust this guy. We hired him to do his job.
We do. But I want to make.
Fired.
No, I'm not gonna fire you. I'll fire somebody else. There was always the concept in the host community agreement for marijuana that there was impact in the town, and that's why you were entitled to ask for fees. They did not have a limitation that said you have to prove an impact amount and make the fee commensurate with it.
Well, that was the whole idea behind the track, too.
Right,
We're gonna host the track. It's for the impact of hosting the track, the casino. Of course it was. So I'll move on to my next point that I wanted to make, okay? And this goes back to what Mr. Noble was explaining when Mrs. Clark spoke regarding the $900,000 or $1 million that's in the capital stabilization fund. And so that was when the town decided that departments that were getting 48% or getting 200% increases last year at the town meeting, they couldn't scale it back by 2.5% and put some reoccurring money aside, like I had asked to do. Then that's where that money would have come from, that would allow us to mitigate some of this, and we could have added to it every year. But no, we had to, everybody had to have a 200% increase or a 48% increase. So 10 departments, I'm just trying to clarify this, where the money would have come from under the scenario that she was thinking about when she was corrected by Mr. Noble. So that's, if you cut back by 2.5%, we'd at least be able to impact a little bit.
Yes, if we cut every budget by some amount, we can impact that.
No, I just asked you to reduce the increase by 2.5%.
Mr. Shepherdson?
I just want to bring a little, under this impact here, and I'm kind of representing myself as a senior and the rest of the 2,576 seniors. None of them can afford that lowest one you got there. Because I've been in their homes, and it's pathetic what they have to, how the way they have to live. So the line will get longer for their help. You'll have them lined up over here for that Tax Relief Act and that kind of stuff. And that's all I want to say.
Yeah, all right, thank you for the input.
Because the only time that seems that seniors are remembered is election time and voting time. Other than that, there's kind of a slight neglect. That's all I'm saying. Because everybody in this room, if things go right, will become seniors too. So please just think about the seniors too. You know.
Yeah, your point is well taken. And I want to be clear. I call this an impact. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to sell the project. I'm just trying to say this is the overall budget impact. If this gets approved, we're gonna have to figure out something, because I don't think passing this number on as is the right answer.
No, all I heard all night, if, should, could, would. How do you pin the tail on the donkey if he keeps moving? You admitted that you couldn't even nail anything down because everything's floating around in the air. And anyway, thank you.
It's been frustrating for years.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack. Any other questions?
I'm good.
You're good.
It was great.
Oh, thank you all for attending. Those of you online, thank you for watching. This is an important project. People really need to look at it and judge what to do on the vote for the schools. And we will be talking more about how to pay for it if the vote goes that way October 24th.